Hello and welcome. This is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, I'm going to create a sweet as pie card, and I'm going to use the stitched edge circle dies from the new Lisa Horton collection to do it. When I was creating recently with this set, I looked at this circle die with the kind of lattice insert to go in it, and I thought it kind of looked like a pie with the woven pie crust, and I thought it'd be fun to create a different look with this die set. So I have some light brown cardstock from my scraps bin, and I'm cutting the stitched edge circle as well as that lattice insert with it. I'm also going to cut that same stitched edge circle with just the plain circle die to create a bit of a crust or a rim to go on top of it for a little bit of extra dimension. So I do like to tape those dies together when I'm using more than one die, just to make sure that nothing moves out of place and everything stays nice and even, so that I have everything centered, especially the center dies, that center circle as well as that center lattice. I want to make sure that they are nice and centered, and by taping them into place, I can make sure that they are not going to move when I'm die cutting it in my Spellbinders Platinum 6 machine, or whatever die cutting machine you like to cut your die cuts out of. So once I have those two pieces done and ready, I'm also going to take that inner circle die and cut a piece of Yupo. Now I want to create like a cherry pie or a strawberry pie, something with red in it. And I figured the best way to do that would be to use some alcohol inks or on some Yupo. You could use regular colored cardstock, but there's just a look that alcohol inks have that you just don't really get from regular cardstock. So I have two different alcohol ink colors here. I have some crimson and I have some cranberry. I'm mixing the two of them together, and I'm really only creating a background that is covered with the colors. I'm not creating anything special with the alcohol inks. I just really like the look of them. So I also am using blending solution here. You could use regular isopropyl alcohol. Because we're not using any metallics or mixatives, isopropyl alcohol would work as well. I chose to use the blender because sometimes when you use the blender, you get some darker areas that are kind of thick, and I kind of thought it would look really good as the glaze in berry pies, if you will. Not that you're going to see a ton of this because you're only seeing it through the holes in the lattice, but I just really wanted that look. So I ended up choosing blender solution, but like I said, isopropyl alcohol would work as well and is a more economic choice for this particular card. So once I have those alcohol ink backgrounds done, I just set them aside to dry, clean off my surface, and it's really easy to clean off with some isopropyl alcohol. I'm just working on a glass surface here, so it's very easy to wipe up. I would usually use my isopropyl alcohol in a spray bottle. I just couldn't find it here, so I'm just using it out of the dropper bottle. So while the rest of that alcohol ink background dries, I'm going to take my cardstock pieces. I'm going to ink them or ink blend them with some walnut stain distress ink. I'm using my ultra sticky mat to hold those die cuts in place while I'm ink blending them. I really like how well this mat holds those die cuts in place, but they're still very easy to lift up. So I'm just doing this ink blending to kind of get the idea of a golden crust or a baked crust or whatever. I'm not looking for completely even coverage here. I want to have some areas that are a little bit lighter, some that are a little bit darker, just to give it a little bit more of a natural look. Now, I don't think cherry pies or strawberry pies would have this, but I wanted to have this texture on it. I wanted it to look like the pie crust was sugared. So I'm taking some collage medium with a collage brush, and I'm just brushing it over the center of that pie. I'm not putting anything on the outside because I'm going to put the outer ring on there, and I don't want anything in my way. Once I have that collage medium on there, I'm putting some rock candy glitter. I just have it in a glitter duster, and it's just going to spray a nice fine coat over the whole thing, and then I can set it aside to dry. Now that collage medium dries matte, so I don't have to worry about the shine from it. It's not going to have any shine to it. I'm only going to see the sparkle from the rock candy glitter. And the rock candy glitter is fairly clear. It looks more like a sugared pastry. So I like the look and the texture that gives it. Now I want my alcohol ink background to have the look of glaze. So I'm taking some glossy accents and I'm covering that entire circle with it. Easiest way to do this is to go around the whole outside and then flood the inside. And it's really going to depend on how thick of a coat you get as to how long it's going to take to dry. If you have any bubbles in that glossy accents, you can just pop them with a pin. I let that dry for probably a good hour, and then I put my lattice circle on top of it. I wanted to put it on top of it while it was still somewhat wet because I wanted to make sure that that glossy accents was going to help glue that top in place. I also wanted to have the look of some of that glaze kind of popping up and out. You know how when you cook pies, some of the filling kind of goes over top of the crust? I wanted to have that look. So while that is dried, or once that is dried, I can start working on the rest of the card. Now off screen, I went and I die cut the letters for the words sweet, pie, and thank you, which is thank you is going to go on the inside of the card. I thought it would be great to have your sweetest pie on the front of the card and then thank you on the inside of the card. So I'm using this Concord and Ninth set here, and it is called Perfectly Penned, and it has all sorts of different alphabets in script as well as kind of a chunky font. I would have chosen the chunky font if there was lowercase. It was only uppercase, and I didn't want to have the look of that stamped in uppercase. So I'm using some of the script here. I'm using a combination of the uppercase as well as the lowercase. Now these are all individual letters, so I'm using a tiny, tiny stamp block, and I'm just stamping them with that same walnut stain distress ink that I used to ink blend on my pie crust. With this script here, you can join each one of the letters so they look like they are continuous, and I like to have that option. I'm doing them on a little tiny bit of an angle so that I can make sure that I have enough room for that sweet word. I don't want to accidentally run out of room and have those die cut letters all squished together. So it's really easy to stamp with this set and join all the letters together. You can't do a bunch of letters at the same time because the way that stamps are, they have a bit of a curved edge to them, so you wouldn't get your letters joining together. So you definitely have to do them one by one in order to get those letters to join together, but it really doesn't take a ton of time. Once I have that sentiment completely stamped on there, I can start assembling the rest of my card. So I have some Barely Art glue and a fine tip bottle here that I'm going to put on the back side of my pie. I have a large acrylic block that I'm just going to put down on there to hold that piece in place while it's drying. Now, normally when I'm gluing paper to paper, it takes really not very long for that glue to start grabbing. I want to say like maybe 10 seconds. Because I'm gluing Yupo to paper, and Yupo is a plastic paper, so it's totally synthetic. I'm not having that paper to paper contact with the glue. It's plastic to paper, so it is going to take a little bit longer. So you'll see as I'm gluing my letters down, sometimes a few of them will shift and I have to reposition them. Once they are repositioned and I'm completely done and not messing around with this background, I can set it aside to completely dry, and they're not going to move on their own when I'm not working on it. It's typically only when I'm working on it and I happen to touch something or brush something with my tweezers that they start to move. I also like to use some reverse tweezers while placing everything, because then I can hold it with the tweezers, put the glue on it, transfer it from one hand to the other, and place it down. And I don't have to worry about getting glue on my hands. I don't have to worry about constantly holding the tweezers closed, because with reverse tweezers, you push them or you press or squeeze them in order to open them, not to close them. So with the letters down on the front of the card, I can put the thank you on the inside of the card. And I have pieces of white cardstock here. I'm going to put both of these pieces onto a craft card base because that's going to tie in well with my pie crust. So I wanted to make sure that my images were very visible. I wanted to use white on the front, so I thought white on the inside with those thank you letters would be perfect. And the dies that I'm using for the thank you and the sweet and the pie letters are Be Bold uppercase and Be Bold lowercase. They're two different sets. One has just uppercase and one has the lowercase. And I love that they work together very well. And it's nice that you can use a letter die set like this and create custom sentiments. I looked to see if there was sentiments that said sweet as pie, and I couldn't find anything. There's probably something out there, but this worked with what I already had, so it was perfect. And it's sweet as pie is, or a sweet as pie card is not one that I would make often, so it's really not something that I totally need. So it's nice to have a die set that you can use on your cards to make custom things like this on ones that you wouldn't necessarily do very often. So it doesn't necessarily make sense to have a set just for that particular sentiment. So once those letters are dried on the white pieces of cardstock, I can glue them to my card base. Changed my mind. I ended up putting it on a red card base. It just popped out the letters as well as the filling in the pie. And that is my completed card. I absolutely love the way it turned out. Like I said, it's not a card that I would make often, but it's just a fun, different one. And I love the look of that die as a pie. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you spending your time with me. Have a fantastic day.